wind dragged dust across the prairie like a whisper chasing its own ghost. The barn slouched at the far end of the property looked more ruin than shelter, its boards silvered with age, its roof bowed like an old man's back. Each night just after the last purple of dusk sank into black, the ranch dog Boone sat by the porch and stared toward that barn. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just stared head low. Ears flat, eyes fixed as if waiting for something to step out from the shadowed woe. Elias Cade noticed it first in spring, thought it odd. By summer it was a ritual. The dog wouldn't eat until he'd done his watch. Boone was old, half-blind, and grizzled, the last survivor of a litter born the same week Elias buried his wife. The bond between man and dog ran silent and deep. Boone didn't scare easy, but now he wouldn't go near the barn. That night lightning flashed dry across the horizon. Boone rose from his haunches, stiff ears perked forward. Then he growled low and grave, the sound of something remembering pain. Elias stepped outside, shotgun loose in one hand, eyes narrowing toward the barn. Then 2 knocks, not loud, not frantic, just deliberate, wood on wood. From inside, Boone backed away, tail B2. Elias stared at the barn, the air around him cold despite the heat of July. The prairie held its breath, no other sound came, just Boone's slow whimper and the creak of the barn door swaying a hair wider in the wind, though there was. The dog didn't stop watching, and neither did Elias, not until dawn painted the world in gray. Elias Cade had once been a man who filled a room with his voice, the kind of laugh that could break tension like a hammer on glass. Those days were gone. Now he moved slow, with a limp in his right leg and a stiffness in his left shoulder, skin mottled with an old burn that crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath the collar of his sweat-stained shirt. He wore the same hat every day, wide-brimmed and sun-bleached, its crown patched where embers once fell. Folks around the nearest town of Belfield hadn't seen him in years, and most believed he was dead. He might as well have been. His ranch sat 30 miles from any living soul except for coyotes and crows. The place was dry, the well shallow, the cattle long gone. Elias didn't ride anymore. He didn't plant or hunt. He survived mostly on tins and jerky and whatever Boone sniffed out. A Bible lay open on his table, always to the same page, Lamentations chapter 5. But the words were stained with old whiskey spills and never read. There was a letter in his desk drawer, yellowed and torn at the edge, signed by someone named Caleb, postmarked from Still Hollow, dated 7 years back. Elias never opened it, just ran a thumb over the seal every now and again like it might burn him anew. The fire had taken more than his wife. It had taken his name from the land. After that night, after what happened in Still Hollow, he'd come here, hid here. Let the world forget him. The barn, once full of hay and laughter and warmth, stood untouched. He never set foot inside it. Not since the fire. Not since he buried something or someone beneath the floorboards. He couldn't quite remember how it all happened. Or wouldn't let himself. There were dreams of smoke and a child's scream and a man with blood on his teeth. But when he woke, the memories scattered like crows. Boone never barked without reason. Elias had learned that over the years. The dog had sensed storms before they came, rattlers before they struck, death before it arrived. So when Boone growled toward the barn that night, Elias knew it wasn't the wind that stirred him. The next morning, Elias loaded a few shells into his old Winchester and sat on the porch, eyes scanning the line of the barn. Boone lay beside him, tired but alert, ears flicking at the slightest sound. Elias muttered a curse under his breath and reached for the bottle hidden beneath the floorboards. But something stopped him. There was a track in the dust. A child's footprint, small, fresh, leading from the barn to the edge of the pasture. Elias stood. His bones protested. The air felt colder than it should. He followed the track step by step until it vanished at the dry creek bed. Boone followed, ears perked, nose twitching. Then just beyond the ridge, in the brittle shade of a lone juniper, he saw it. A child, barefoot, silent, watching him. And in the boy's dirt-smeared hands, a rusted tin box. The boy didn't speak, not then. Not when Elias approached, not when Boone padded forward and sniffed him, tail low, body tense. He just clutched the rusted tin box like it was the last thing tethering him to the world. Dirt streaked his face and dried blood rimmed his nose. His clothes hung off him in tatters, more rag than fabric, and his eyes, black as pitch, held a kind of stillness Elias hadn't seen in a child since the war. Elias crouched slowly, knees crackling, and set the shotgun down in the grass. "You lost?" he asked, voice rasped from disuse. The boy blinked but said nothing. Elias tried again. "You from Belfield?" No answer. The boy glanced at Boone, then back at Elias, eyes darting once to the barn in the distance. A chill feathered across Elias's spine. "You been in my barn, boy?" he asked softer. The boy didn't move, just clutched the box tighter. Elias exhaled. He looked around, no horse, no wagon, no sign of anyone else. No one sent a boy alone into the plains, not unless they wanted him gone. He stood and jerked a thumb toward the house. "Come on, then. Ain't gonna stand here in the sun all day." The boy hesitated, then stepped forward. Boone fell in beside him without a sound. Inside, Elias warmed a pan of beans and tore a hunk of bread in half. The boy ate like someone who hadn't seen food in days but still kept one hand on the box. Elias didn't press. He watched. The boy was maybe 9, maybe 10. Thin wrists, calloused palms, not afraid, just hollow, like something had emptied him out. After the meal, Elias offered a cot in the spare room. The boy curled up back to the wall, still clutching the tin. Boone lay at the door. Elias didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, listening to the wind scratch the windows, thinking about the knock on the barn door, about how Boone had growled, about the footprint in the dust. In the morning, Elias found the boy standing outside before dawn, staring toward the barn. Boone sat beside him, ears forward, tail still. Elias called out. The boy didn't turn, didn't flinch, just stared. It went on like that for 3 days. No name, no words, no story. But on the 4th day, when Elias set a mug of coffee down and sat across from him at the table, the boy slid the tin box forward, slow and solemn. Elias opened it. Inside were 3 things: a silver badge scorched on one edge, a broken harmonica, and a photo, creased and faded, of a younger Elias standing beside a man in a deputy's coat. The other man had a scar under his left eye. They were smiling. Behind them, a sign read "Still Hollow Sheriff's Office." Elias's hand trembled as he touched the photo. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "That was my father." The next morning, long before the sun had burned the mist off the plains, Boone's bark cracked through the air like a whip. Elias was already on the porch, rifle in hand. The boy crouched behind the doorframe inside. Dust rose on the horizon, thick and fast, riders coming hard. Not a friendly ride, not at that pace. Elias squinted, the light slicing through the east like a knife. 5 figures mounted shadows, bending long behind them. Armed, no doubt. Only one place they could have come from. Still Hollow. The lead rider wore a duster the color of dried blood, his beard streaked with gray, and Cole a black Stetson pulled low. Even from 50 yards, Elias knew that walk, that swagger. Colum Vane used to wear a star before he turned bounty hunter, used to ride beside Elias when law still meant something. Now his eyes looked like glass after a fire, cracked, dark and dangerous. They didn't tie their horses, didn't dismount slow. They surrounded the porch like it was already theirs. Colum stopped at the foot of the steps, hand resting on the revolver at his side. The other 4, Baines, Keller, Doc, and young Jesse, fanned out. Known killers, all of them, scarred and sunburnt. Elias counted every holster, every twitch. Morning Elias, Colum said, voice smooth, almost kind. "Been a while." "Not long enough," Elias replied, rifle unmoved. Boone growled low from the doorway. Colum smiled like a wolf. "We're here for the boy." Elias didn't blink. "He's got no name, no charge, and no reason to be hunted." Colum tilted his head. "He's got blood on his name. His daddy killed 3 men in Still Hollow, burned alive in that barn of yours 7 years back. You remember that, don't you?" Elias said nothing. Colum stepped closer. "The boy went missing that night. Thought he died in the fire, but rumors been crawling that he's out here carrying something. Something buried." Behind Elias, the boy listened, his fingers clenched around the tin box again. "We think he's got what his daddy left behind," Colum said. Maps, names, ledgers. Ain't about justice, Elias. It's about what's owed. There's money under that barn. That boy's the key. Elias's jaw tightened. He raised the rifle half an inch. Ain't no treasure here. Column's smile vanished. I didn't ride out here for a lie. Step aside. Elias didn't move. A beat passed, then another. The other riders shifted. Baines flicked a matchstick between his teeth. Keller unstrapped his shotgun. Boone barked sharp once. Be sure, Elias, Column said low. You're shielding the son of a man who took lives. You think hiding from the past makes you holy. You buried him under your barn. Don't act like you're innocent. That cut. The memory flared smoke heat, screams. A dying man's hand reaching through flame. I was there, Elias said quietly, but I didn't light the fire. Column's eyes narrowed. Doesn't matter who struck the match, you let it burn. A silence swelled between them, thick with old shame. Then Column stepped back, mounted up with a gesture. We'll return at dusk, he called over his shoulder. One way or another, we're taking the boy, and if we gotta take the barn too, so be it. They rode off in a cloud of red dust. Elias stood alone on the porch, rifle still raised until the wind cleared the dirt. Boone watched the horizon, growling low, his muzzle twitching. Inside, the boy sat at the table, holding the tin close. He looked up at Elias, something more than fear behind those black eyes. What's buried in that barn? Elias asked, voice hoarse. The boy looked toward the sagging structure. My father, he said, and everything they wanted to forget. The sky was iron gray by late afternoon, the air thick with the taste of ash before the fire. Elias moved like a man 10 years younger, urgency carving speed into his limbs. He boarded the barn windows. From the inside, hammered braces against the old doors, laid out 3 hunting rifles, his 6-shot Colt, a crate of shells. The boy helped without needing to be told. He passed tools, rolled wire, fed the dog. He still hadn't said much, but his eyes spoke, loud eyes that had seen too much, that knew this was the kind of night no child should ever see twice. Boone paced the porch, teeth bared to the wind. Something in the sky rattled. Not thunder. Not yet. They came just after dusk. Shadow's first 5 riders split wide across the darkening field, closing in slow. No rush this time. They thought they had the right. Boone growled. Elias stood just inside the front door, rifle across his chest, boy at his back. He'd taught the kid how to reload that morning. Showed him the trap door beneath the table. Said nothing about dying, but everything he did said he expected to. Column called out from beyond the yard fence. Last chance, Elias. Send him out and we don't burn your place to the dirt. Elias stepped out, shotgun raised. You so sure you want what's in that barn? Column snorted. We know what's under it. We know who put it there. I buried a man, Elias said. Not gold. Column smiled cold. You buried a witness and a ledger. That boy's daddy had names, ours among them. Baines fired the first shot. A warning splintered the wood near Elias's boot. The battle was lit. Gunfire cracked like splitting bones. Elias dropped behind the water trough, returned 2 shots, one caught Keller's shoulder. Doc took the right flank, but Boone met him with teeth and fury, latched onto his arm before Elias's bullet finished him. The boy from behind the porch rail slid fresh shells toward Elias's palm. Baines tried to circle the barn. Elias spotted him through the slats, fired through the wood. The man screamed, dropped his rifle, stumbled into the door. Elias cursed. The fire was next. A torch flew. It landed against the barn's side, oil slicked and primed. Flames rose fast. Dry wood drank fire like water. Elias shouted, ran toward the blaze, Boone at his heels. From behind the barn, Jesse appeared, barely 18, shaking pistol aimed. Elias froze. Don't, he barked. But the boy had already moved. Quick, precise, he flung a shovel from the porch. It struck Jesse's hand. The gun clattered. Boone lunged. Jesse screamed, fell back. Elias grabbed the torch and flung it clear. Too late. The barn was lit. Inside, smoke coiled. Fire licked the rafters. Elias kicked in the side door and plunged into the heat. Boone followed, barking madly. Beneath the floorboards, just beneath the trap where the scent was strongest, Elias found an old leather satchel sealed with rope. It was blistered but intact. He yanked it free, stumbled out as the roof caved behind him. Boone made it out last, his fur scorched a deep gash across his side. Elias dragged the dog clear collapse to one knee. The boy ran to him, eyes wide with something like terror and trust mixed. Behind them, Colum stood alone now. The others were gone, fled or dying. Colum looked at the barn, then at Elias, then at the boy. "This ain't over," he said. Elias opened the satchel. Inside pages, dozens, names, dates, numbers, ledgers, tracking every bribe, every stolen bounty, every lie written in blood. Colum's name? Keller's. Sheriff Marks. Even Elias's once. "I know," Elias said, "but maybe now it'll be known." Colum reached for his pistol. Boone snarled, forced himself upright. The boy stepped between Elias and Colum. "Don't," he said. His voice clear, firm, cut through the smoke. Colum froze. That voice so familiar. The child of the man he left to die. Colum lowered the gun, then turned mounted and rode off without another word. The fire burned through the night. The barn collapsed inward, a funeral pyre to the secrets of Still Hollow. Boone lay bleeding on the porch head in Elias's lap, eyes fading. "You done good, old friend," Elias whispered. The dog licked his hand once, then stilled. Elias looked to the boy who sat with the satchel in his lap, eyes red but dry. "What's your name, son?" Elias asked. The boy held up the photo. "My father's name was Caleb." Elias nodded. "Then you're Caleb's boy." They sat in silence as the sky turned pale and ash drifted over the field like gray snow. The sun rose blood orange behind the scorched frame of the barn, outlining its skeletal remains, like a crucifix half sunk in the earth. Elias didn't sleep. He sat by Boone's grave, a mound of dirt beneath the juniper tree, the satchel beside him. The boy hadn't spoken again. He just watched the ashes fall, his face carved from something older than 10 years. Elias knew that kind of silence. It was the silence of someone who carried too much too young. Later that morning, Elias lit a lantern and opened the satchel fully. He laid each page on the table one by one, his eyes combing through Caleb's handwriting. Caleb, a man he once called brother. They'd ridden together in Still Hollow when the badge meant something, until one night when the ledger started. Names of men locked up without cause, land taken, pockets filled. Elias had turned away. Caleb had written it all down, tried to expose it, and died for it. Among the pages was a letter folded twice. To Elias it read. Elias unfolded it with trembling hands. "Old friend," it began. "If you're reading this, it means the fire didn't kill everything. I never blamed you. You froze, I understand that now. I shouted your name and you turned. But that's what fire does. It blinds, it chokes. You weren't the match. They were. Colum, Marks, all of them. I buried this because it had to survive even if I didn't. My boy, he's yours now. Not by blood, but by bond. Teach him what I failed to finish and forgive yourself. You did more than you know." Elias wiped a hand across his eyes. The boy stood in the doorway watching. "I ran," Elias whispered. "That night, when they lit it, I heard you scream. I thought you died angry. That's why I buried you myself, with my own hands, so no one else could decide your story." The boy stepped forward, eyes fixed on the letter. "He used to play the harmonica," he said, "badly, but every night. I remember that." Elias smiled, bitter and broken. "He did. Drove us all mad. They burned the ledgers that afternoon one by one, not to destroy them, but to release them, Caleb's wish." The last page was Elias's name. A note beside it, turned away. Didn't sell out. But silence can be bought too. That night Elias dreamt of the fire again. But this time Caleb didn't scream. He stood in the barn doorway, smiling, holding the harmonica. "You finally heard me," he said. Elias woke to the boy shaking his shoulder. "There's someone out front," the boy whispered. Elias rose fast. No rifle, just boots and breath. At the gate stood a rider, alone, young, wore no weapon, held a bag in one hand and a tin badge in the other. "Are you Elias Cade?" he asked. Elias nodded. The rider dismounted, opened the bag, pulled out a wanted poster. Caleb's face. Old and faded. "They say his son's alive," the rider said. "I'm here to offer protection, if he needs it." Elias looked back at the boy who stood just behind the door. "He's not hiding anymore," Elias said, "but he'll need a name." The boy stepped out, walked to Elias's side. The rider knelt, handed the badge to the boy. "You got one?" he asked. The boy looked to Elias, then back to the badge. "I do now," he said. Caleb Cade. Elias's heart caught, and somewhere in the distance, through the wind and the ash, he swore he heard a harmonica playing. Not well, but clear. By the end of that week, the barn was gone. Only the stone foundation remained, blackened and broken, ringed by scorched grass that wouldn't grow again for years. Elias and the boy Caleb, now proper and firm in name, marked Boone's grave with the dog's old collar and a flat stone carved with a single word, "Loyal." They buried the satchel, too, beneath the barn's ruins. The pages had served their purpose. Still, Hollow would hear whispers, names returned from the dead, stories scrawled in the dirt, a badge passed from father to son. No courtroom would touch it. But word once unburied spreads like fire. Elias sent the young rider back with a note. "The boy stays here. He's safe. Let the wind carry the rest." The house was patched, the porch rebuilt. Caleb helped now, hands dirty, eyes softer. He spoke more each day, piecing his own story together, memory by memory. At night, Elias read aloud from that old whiskey-stained Bible, though not from Lamentations anymore. He'd moved on to Psalms. One morning they saddled the old mule and rode into Belfield. People stared. Some recognized Elias, most didn't. The boy walked like someone who'd seen fire and come through it, not untouched but unbroken. At the general store, Caleb picked out a harmonica. Said he wanted to try it, maybe not well, but for the noise. Elias laughed. Back home they played in the evenings. Boone's collar jingled in the wind when it blew across the porch. The barn was just a black shape on the land, now a scar turned quiet. Elias Cade still walked with a limp, still bore the burn up his neck, but something in him had shifted, like a weight finally set down. He no longer watched the barn at night, no longer braced at every creak. One evening Caleb asked, "Do you think he knows my father?" Elias looked toward the tree where Boone lay, toward the barn's ashes. He knew before we did. They sat quiet after that, the kind of quiet that heals. Caleb played the harmonica, soft and wandering, while the sun bled out over the plains, and Elias closed his eyes and listened, really listened for the first time in years. And when dawn rose again over the scorched earth, it wasn't red with fire, it was gold. Just a story ends, but the dust remembers. Somewhere in the heart of the prairie, where a dog once stood watch and a barn burned clean, a boy found his name and a man forgave himself. The plains whispered something new that morning, and the wind carried it west. If this story stirred something in you, there are more waiting down the trail. Subscribe and we'll ride together again.